Hi, if you're looking to understand the major privacy laws such as the GDPR, the CCPA, HIPPA, FERPA, and the GLBA a little better, then this is the video for you. Hi, I'm Divi, future cyber law attorney, and let's understand these major laws together. So I've been doing a couple of research, and the first thing I want to point out is digital footprint. So what is a digital footprint? Your digital footprint is basically your online presence, and I'm looking over here because I have no laptop to do here, so don't mess any facts up. So basically, it's your online presence, and it's about where you go online, what you do online, what you research, all those things, right? So it's basically a collective data about your online personnel. For example, if you wanted to buy some Christmas stockings for Christmas coming up, currently November 25th, then you probably would go on Amazon, you probably would, hurry up and order it so it can take time, and then boom, cookies. Cookies are basically tracking. You think like cookie crumbs, when you eat a cookie, the crumbs fall in the spot that you were just in, right? So it basically shows where you've been, it leaves a trail of where you've been, and that's what your online presence over time consists of and it builds. That's what algorithms use to better understand what kind of person you are, what kind of advertisements you're going to like, and stuff of that nature. So this is why it's very crucial to protect your digital footprint, because it basically shows who you are online. So the digital footprint ties very heavily into the GDPR, because the GDPR is what deals mostly with the general protection of data. The GDPR actually stands for General Data Protection Regulation that applies to the European Union. And the European Union is just a political and economic union of 27 European countries that work together on common laws, trade, security, and policy. So you can expect the European Union follows this law very well, very closely, because there are punishments for not following the law, and some of those include like fines and so some of them include 20 million euro fines. Oh my gosh, so you know that they're following these laws. Okay, but why does that matter to you? Why does that make sense? Why do we care about general protection, cookies, digital footprint? Why do we care about any of that, right? Let's get into it. Okay, so simply understanding GDPR and what it has to do with digital footprint, cookies, and whatever, basically you have information, right? And information is valuable. So if you have personal information, this includes like your name, your address, your email, stuff like that. That's personal information because it can be linked back to a human entity, right? That is important information because it tells us about you for free, right? Companies value who you are because things like market is basically a group or demographic or whatever that they are pushing their content or they're pushing their product towards, right? So if they have information on you for free, then they basically have free insight in where they should push their information or whatever towards, right? So you can decide to not be harassed by these companies and by people because they know this information about you, hence having a clean digital footprint, or you can just have laws in place that say, hey, I want to be able to manage my digital footprint, and that's where GDPR comes in. So GDPR basically says that sure, we can have this information be out there on the internet, but there has to be some rules. Here are the main rules. So the main rules are data minimization. So they're only able to collect what they need to collect. And so basically they're supposed to specify, hey, we need this information for a specific reason. This is a valid reason. Let us have that information, right? And then obviously the consent has to be explicit and informed, meaning that if I don't outright just say, yeah, you can have my information, they have to have a very valid reason that says, we don't need your consent. There is a specific reason why we just can obtain this information. And that's typically tied to the government. Like the government, they need that stuff. They need to know that stuff to protect everyone as a whole. So they might not actually for consent, but stuff like companies, websites, they're going to do that for the most part. Right to access and correct. So basically you have the right to access the information that a company or website has on you. Of course, there is time frames to these, so you can't just get it immediately. They are going to have to give them some time, but I think it is 3 months they have to give it to you, and they have to give you everything that they have of you, like all the information that they have of you, give it to you. I think some of them give you some of that, and then the rest of it comes in a paywall, but I'm not too sure about that. This is just like the general understanding of it. Also the right to erasure. And erasure, basically think of it as like erasing something. When you erase something, you're getting rid of its essence, its presence for the most part. Yeah, the right to be deleted, the right to be forgotten. So there's a good example of this. There was a really young picture of me on Google when I typed in my first and last name, and I found this picture. I was like, hey, can you guys delete this picture? I don't want this to be on there. And my little brain was like, oh, they're not going to delete it because it's on the internet. Whatever is on the internet stays on the internet, which to an extent is true. But I also have the right to erasure. So it is my personal data, my personal information. They have no right to say, no, this has to stay on here. It's not like I'm a criminal convict or whatever. So it's not like it's a mugshot or something that has to be public and on there. So they just got rid of it. And they actually got rid of it fairly quickly. And that's, one of our rights as civilians, a part of the European Union. And also breach notification. So if a company has a breach, they have to notify the European Union within 72 hours. They have to notify you within 72 hours and basically just let it be known that this serious thing happened. Okay, so swiftly moving on to CCPA, CCPRA, which is the California Consumer Privacy Act. Basically, it's the California law protecting personal information, but only for California residents. So it's like the GDPR, but just for the California residents. It's similar, but it's not quite the same. There are very slight differences, but you can essentially say that it's GDPR just for California, right? So you get to know what info is collected. You have to delete your personal information. You get to opt out of sale data, which is kind of the same as cookies because websites have to ask you to accept and decline cookies, so similar that way too. And non-discrimination for exercising privacy rights. So of course, the privacy rights has to be fair and applied to everyone who is a genuine California resident, right? So yeah, it's basically GDPR for California. Okay, so while GDPR applies to the European Union, CCPA/CPRA shows how U.S. states are catching up and how cyber lawyers guide companies through both regimes simultaneously. Okay, so basically, you can understand CCPA as like initial GDPR, and then the CPRA is just kind of helps the CCPA do a better job at what it's supposed to do. So there is a word for it, I'm not remembering that word, but yeah, they just kind of help each other, they support each other to do a better job. Okay, so let's move on to HIPAA. By the way, it means California Consumer Privacy Act. That's what CCP oh my god, that's like a tongue twister. CCPA. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about HIPAA. So HIPAA basically is health data privacy. What does HIPAA mean? I really wish I put what HIPAA stands for. It doesn't necessarily matter as long as you know that it's for specifically health information, but I'm sure you guys would love it if we knew exactly what it meant. But it's just health data privacy and whatever has to do with health information. So if you're a patient, if you get a checkup, if you went to the ER, all that stuff that ties to you, but in a health-related term, gets handled in a different way. So I think that's probably one of the biggest markets in terms of law because it is super sensitive information, right? So yeah, there's a lot of HIPAA law, HIPAA lawyers, HIPAA attorneys, because and there's a vast amount of it. Just imagine the amount of people who go to the doctor and go to the emergency room, and anything that's health related. That's like thousands of people, probably more than that a day. So it's a lot of data. Anyway. And it also gets moved around from companies. Remember that a lot of hospitals, they are run by businesses, right? So these businesses, we're just trusting them to do the right thing with our data. Like that's a lot of And by the way, this is just like the breakdown, like simply understanding these major privacy laws, because I'm learning them too. So breaking them down to this level helps me not only learn them properly, but remember them. I might do a more like professional video later when I have a larger grasp of it and I can articulate better these things. But for now, I'm just gonna have to work with it. Okay, moving on to FERPA, which is just student data privacy. So basically, protection, but for students. And remember, when you're a student in America, and if you in America, I don't know about any other place, but European Union, I know America's a part of it. Out in Florida, whenever they want to like take a picture or like have a picture that they're going to post to media, you have to sign it, or your parents have to sign it or something, and that's a part of FERPA because they're basically not allowed to expose your information without your consent. So and it's also like a part of, because I'm in university right now, we can't even let our parents or our siblings or whatever access our personal information unless we have it signed on a paper, on a legal form, saying that, hey, yeah, this person can look at my information, right? So that's FERPA, just to make sure that we have privacy within our personal information, right? Because not everybody's going to be comfortable with their parents enough to just have them come in here and be like, oh yeah, give me all my child's information, right? Especially now that they're an adult. But that's just for university. The same thing applies to like regular school, like grade school, but grade school, of course, you're a minor, so your parents or whoever your guardian is has to be the one to sign off those papers and whatnot. So yeah, it's protecting student records, and it's optional for school, college imagery. Yeah. Like when they went to video. Yeah, so yeah, with icons for access, correction, consent. Basically GDPR, but It's not general. It's school information. we're overall protecting information. Okay, now what about the GLBA? The GLBA is for financial, and when I see GLBA, it kind of looks like global, right? Kind of looks like global, and that's my way of remembering that it is one of the most broadest one, and it spans, like, when you think about how the world runs, you think money, you think finance. Like, how are the richest people staying rich? Finance, right? Investing, credit, using borrowed money instead of their own money and stuff like that, right? So financial data protection. Now this one is a crazy one because this is where it's tricky. This is where, like, social security number comes in. This is where the credit card comes in. This is where, fishy things happen, fraud happens, stuff like that happens, and it happens on a larger scale than these other laws. So this one is pretty important, even though they all are incredibly important. This one is probably one of the biggest ones. I made a video, probably gonna put it here or here, about the Equifax, and basically the Equifax. I don't believe the GLBA was big here, or the GDPR yet when Equifax happened, but I'm pretty sure, because Equifax is one of the US's, like, probably biggest credit unions at the time, so it would have definitely fallen under the GLBA, and it would have I mean, they did get a pretty crazy penalty, but at the same time, we can't let those things happen often. We can't let them things happen at all. Anyway, I think the GDPR, I know there was some kind of law in place, and they did have some kind of repercussion for that, but I do believe that if it happened today, it would be 10 times worse. It would be a much bigger mistake than it was back then. So that's basically it. The CDPR, the CCPA, the HIPPA, the FERPA, the GLBA. So we have both generally understood these 4, 5, if you count the CPRA, major laws: GDPR, European Union, CCPA, California residents, HIPAA, health information, FERPA, student information, and then GLBA, financial information. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. But if you like this video, you're definitely gonna like this video.